Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sports 2.0 show. My name is Ryan. I have Amber and Aaron with me. I'm very excited to start the show. But before we do, how are you guys doing today?
I'm doing great today. Excited about all the situations that are happening in sports, free agency, and NBA, which is what we're going to be talking about. Is go almost towards the end of it, and I'm excited to talk about that.
Yeah, I'm doing good. It's a great day. Like Aaron said, I'm ready to talk about this NBA free agency.
Yeah, I feel like when free agency first started, that was kind of the talk of sports. But now that the NFL preseason is about to start and training camps in full gear, the NBA free agency is kind of taking a back seat, but we definitely haven't forgot about it. So there's been a few storylines that have come up ever since we did our last show. The first major one is the Miami Heat and Chicago Bulls tampering investigation by the NBA. They are looking into whether or not the Heat and Bulls contacted Kyle Lowry and Lonzo Ball for those sign and trade deals. So I last season the trade deadline, Kyle Lowry was linked to go to the Heat, but it didn't end up happening. And I think as soon as free agency started, he did get signed, which may be why the NBA is a little suspicious. I don't want to, anticipate anything or speculate, but that definitely could be something to watch. And to be honest, I'm not too sure about the Bulls. I haven't really heard them being linked to Lonzo, so maybe Aaron, you know more about that situation.
Yeah, I looked a little bit into the Heat situation. The Heat, Ira Winderman, who is a beat writer for the Heat, he posted a tweet a few days ago saying to clarify the Heat are not being investigated for tampering, but they are for gun jumping over timing of the Larry move. It's been told a process almost assuredly will not unwind the acquisition of Kyle Larry, but it could have involved in draft picks removed, fines, and sanctions. So, and it said this process might take a few weeks. So in that situation, Kyle Lowry will still be a member of the Heat, which it seems like, but the Heat are going to lose some draft picks and maybe a fine, which they won't be that mad about because it'll probably just be a second round pick and stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't think that's that big of a slap on the wrist if you're getting Kyle Lowry to play for you.
Yeah, I agree. Welcome, Jaya, by the way. Thank you for
Hello,
being here.
guys.
How are you doing?
Good, good. I'm hearing some Kyle Lowry talk. Pretty exciting.
Yeah, we're talking about how the NBA is investigating the Heat and the Bulls for tampering. Aaron just mentioned how the Bulls are actually. You said the. Sorry, go ahead.
The Heat are will not be Kyle Lowry will still be a member of the Miami Heat. It seems like Lonzo Ball will also be. It seems like the Kyle Lowry situation might be a little more than the Lonzo Ball, like by tampering or, as I mentioned earlier, just talking to them early and stuff like that. But I think it'll be fine. They'll just get a fine, or they'll just lose a future draft pick.
Yeah, I don't anticipate.
Yeah.
I don't anticipate them not the NBA taking them off their team. I think that would be a
No.
huge deal. But what I will say is tampering has kind of been in the news now for like the past 5 or 6 years. Look at the Lakers with Anthony Davis. There's been plenty of free agents linked to certain teams, and the NBA has been very strict on tampering. What are your guys' thoughts on tampering just in general?
I think it's hard to prove. Like you can't unless you have specific phone calls and emails and stuff like that before everything started with free agency, it's going to be hard to prove that happened. Even if it did, it's going to be that would be such a major controversy for them to go ahead and call that as tampering without very factual evidence.
I am totally with her. I think it's crazy. It's super hard to find out if they're tampering. It's literally if a team or a player are going to snitch on the team they're joining and stuff like that. And that's never going to happen. Like they need to have their phones wired and stuff like that. And no team will allow that to happen and stuff like that because these are private conversations, which they do not want the league to know their secrets about how they get players and stuff like that. So people have their own ways of trying to get players to join their teams. So they don't want those secrets to be unleashed to the public.
Yeah, and I think a lot organizations kind of deal with these scenarios all the time. It's not really anything new. It's just I don't really anticipate much punishment for this sort of thing, even though they are saying that they're trying to take this type of stuff more seriously.
I agree. Even though tampering is something that the NBA has been very strict on. Like I said, I don't anticipate either something more than a fine or a draft pick. But I will say I believe the NBA has put the tampering rule in place to protect small market teams. Because if you're a big market team like the Lakers or the Heat or even Chicago is a big market, you kind of have the upper hand in terms of your city is really a talking point. If you're a team like the Pelicans, for example, or the Bucks, even though they just won the championship, it's very hard to kind of lure someone in without there being a championship contending team or a lot of money, which looks like nowadays everyone can offer a lot of money. So that's that. We're going to move on to our next topic, which is the Dennis Schroder free agency nightmare. Last season, midway, while he was playing for the Lakers, he was reportedly offered a 4-year, $84 million extension and turned it down. And I'm sure he wished he can go back in time and just accept that deal, because he is now being offered a 1-year deal worth $5.9 million with the Celtics, and he is pushing to get a 1-year, $9.5 million deal with the team. It's crazy how things change. There's been a lot of players in free agency so far that's been getting paid more than $5.9 million and that are less talented than Dennis Schroder, but it just goes to show sometimes you can't be too greedy, because it definitely came back to bite Dennis Schroder.
I think this is kind of like what he deserved for turning down a deal that was that incredible for, he's not, like, he's good. I'm not saying he's not, but he's not exactly in his prime, I guess. And I think wherever he goes, he's going to need to prove himself again. And the team that's looking to sign him knows this. So they're not going to give him a great deal. And that's why he's still hanging around for free agency.
Yeah. You go first.
Oh, I was just going to say that I'm with Amber here. I wouldn't say he's necessarily star player status yet. I don't think anybody would say that necessarily. So I think that was just a poor decision on him. And, it was just a bad business decision. And this is kind of the consequence of him not accepting what he probably should have taken in the first place.
Yeah, like there's a situation similar to this with Victor Oladipo a few years ago when he was on the Rockets. He could have accepted I think it was like $100 million for over 4 years, so $25 million a year. He didn't want to stay with the Rockets, and the Rockets has traded him, and now he's on a contract worth under $3 million a year with Miami Heat for 1 year. So that's another situation with that. So players, they do want to be on winning teams more often, but Dennis Schroder was on a team that could have been winning the championship, and he's won a championship with.
I don't know what's going through his head.
Yeah, I don't either. He thought he could make up to $100 million in total, but getting less than $10 million a year is not even, or getting $10 million, not even $5 million, it seems like, is going to be tough for him to get.
What's interesting is players like Victor Oladipo or DeMarcus Cousins, for example, their value went way down because of injury. But I think Dennis Schroder's value went down because teams don't want to deal with someone who's going to turn down $84 million as a six-man player. So I mean that was crazy. Even before this offseason, when I saw that report that he turned it down, I was shocked. I'm like, what is he thinking?
Yep.
You're with the Lakers in LA, and you're getting offered $84 million. What else more do you want? But I mean, more power to him. I guess he's gonna have to settle for $5.9 million instead of 84 for now. Moving on to our next topic, we're going to be talking about the huge Luka Doncic rookie extension worth up to $207 million for 5 years. No surprise here. I think Doncic is one of the best players in the NBA. He's only 22 years old, and he's already a superstar. What are your guys' thoughts on the deal?
If anybody's going to get paid, I think he deserves to get paid. So it is an insane amount of money, but very much well-deserved.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, I'm totally with them. I think Luka's the face of the NBA in 2 years. I think he's one of the best players in the league already, and I'm very, very excited for his future in the league. And I think this deal is incredible, and he's fully deserved.
Even though it kind of seems like a no-brainer for the Mavericks, I got to give Mark Cuban a lot of credit because there has been some rumors that maybe Doncic is unhappy with the team, the way that the situation has run. He did have an affirmation with Rick Carlisle, but he has been Luka Doncic at 22 has been known to be a little hard-headed. So just locking him up for 5 years, and giving him all the money he wants. I think was very smart by Mark Cuban, not sitting back. He's being very aggressive because you never know. Like, look at Zion Williamson, for example. I anticipate him leaving the Pelicans. I'm not sure why they're not offering him a huge extension already. They could have, but I have not seen that in the news. But if you get such a unique talent with someone like Luka Doncic or Zion Williamson, you lock them up right away. You don't, let the situation linger and then see what happens because players like that can just leave out the door. That's why a player like Giannis with the Bucks, the Bucks are very smart to extend him right away. And look what happened. They won a championship. So this is just a lesson to keep in mind with young superstars especially.
I do want to say, if you anticipate him leaving the Pelicans, where do you think he would go get picked up?
It's too early to say, but if I had to guess, I'd say somewhere like the Heat. Maybe a bigger market team where you can actually have a chance to win a championship with a well-run organization like Pat Riley. If not the Heat, maybe the Clippers or the Lakers or the Knicks even, or the Nets. Just somewhere where you could, in a big market team where he has a good chance of winning and getting all. Sorry to interrupt you, Aaron, but something to keep in mind is players that are in big market teams, they get paid a lot of money in endorsements and sponsorships as well, which is why LeBron's making even more money than he did in Cleveland. So that's just something else that players keep in mind. So that also has to do with it. But go ahead, Aaron.
One thing you have to remember in this situation is that Luka was drafted 1 year before Zion. So Zion still has a little more left on his contract than Luka did. So you got to be remembering of that. And most players don't get their extension that early, and Zion's a little injury prone, also has a team option of him staying 1 more year and stuff like that. So there's still a lot of stuff left in the Zion. I think he'll re-sign. Most number one picks who are great players usually re-sign for that team, at least one re-sign. But I love the Doncic situation because I love it when players stay on a team for as long as possible, not just joining the best team in the league.
I do agree with that. I like the ones that actually stick with it for the long run instead of just going to one that they know they can win a championship with. I think that just shows like their commitment to their team.
Definitely.
Yeah, I agree. It's just nowadays in NBA especially, it's very rare.
It is.
But we'll see. Let's talk about the free agency winners in general. Which teams do you think have improved the most this offseason?
I think it was the Heat and the Bulls. The Heat got Kyle Lowry. He was the best available. And he's obviously very familiar with NBA championships. And I think he's going to bring that energy to the Heat. And then the Heat also signed Jimmy Butler with a 4-year, $184 million extension. So they're going to be real contenders for the NBA title next season.
Yeah, I like that pick. Don't forget PJ Tucker. I thought that was a very underrated signing.
True.
Very fits their team. So, yeah, the Heat are doing great things. What about you, Jaya?
Well, I definitely agree with Amber. I think the Miami Heat was the best, had the most successful free agency. But one team that I feel like is interesting to talk about, or people just seem to have a lot of opinions on, surprisingly, is the whole situation with the Lakers. as you guys know, Carmelo Anthony is now a member of the Lakers, and LeBron is excited. The time is now for them to team up, and the Lakers have acquired a lot of really good players, but because most of them are over the age of 35, people have really been doubting if the Lakers are going to be able to win a championship with this roster. This is going to be the first time that Anthony and James will play together on the same team, but people are like, are the Lakers too old to be championship contenders? Or is this going to be the right recipe of veterans to really win it all? I personally think that, these guys they might be past their prime of youth ages, but they're definitely some of the best in the game. I think they'll definitely be contenders. But I want to know what you guys thought about that whole Lakers situation.
I think, anytime you can add a guy like Russell Westbrook, first and foremost, he plays like he's 20 years old. So
Right.
I don't think age is a factor for him. I will say, though, Anthony Davis has been shown to be injury prone, but he's still younger and in his prime. So I'm just concerned about him staying on the floor, but I'm not concerned about his age. Carmelo Anthony, I think they're not going to be playing him a lot of minutes, so I'm not too concerned about that. Guys, though, like Trevor Ariza, he's been a veteran in this league for a very long time. I think he knows what it takes. Just my only concern is that the Lakers won't take the regular season too seriously, which will allow them, to kind of be like a 5th or 6th seed in the West, which will be a tougher matchup for them if they were obviously 1, 2, or 3 seed. So that's my only concern. But once the playoffs start, I won't be concerned at all because they have all the experience in the world. And don't forget, they're extremely talented. Russell Westbrook, LeBron James, and Anthony Davis on one team is one of the best trios we've seen in a long time. So I definitely would not rule them out. But what are your thoughts, Aaron?
Yeah, I think the Lakers are obviously a good team. I think they went for more of the older players. I still think they're going to be the best team in the West, arguably, or one of the best teams if everyone can stay healthy. But for my free agency winner, as Amber mentioned, I think it's the Bulls. I think they improved more than any other team. I think the acquisitions of Lonzo and DeMar DeRozan and already having good players of Vucevic they got in the trade right before the trade deadline, and already having Zach LaVine and Kobe White, who'll be a 6th man now. I think that's really good acquisitions for them, and I could see them being up to a 4 or 5 seed. So I'm very excited about the Chicago Bulls and maybe adding another good team to the East. As we always see, the East is a little weaker than the West, but the East also have the NBA champions. So that argument is not really that big anymore, in my opinion.
Don't forget about DeMar DeRozan. I think that was a great pickup as well. What are your thoughts on him fitting in with Zach LaVine here?
I think it's going to be a good I think they're very similar type players. I think they're both Zach LaVine's obviously more athletic and has added a 3-point game to his shot. DeMar DeRozan's just a flat-out scorer and a good defender. DeRozan still doesn't have that 3-point shot that's in the NBA as the king of the mid-range. So I think it'll be a good addition just to have another scorer on that team, and getting him is just leadership. Has been far in the playoffs and has been coached by the best coach in the league in Popovich. So I think he'll add a very, very good experience to the team and will be able to help players like Lonzo, LaVine, and Vucevic out a lot.
Do you have any thoughts, Amber or Jaya, about the situation in Chicago?
I think the Bulls have made some big signings, like you guys mentioned, but I don't know that I'm convinced that they're real championship contenders yet. I could be wrong. Like I said, those were really good moves, but I just don't know that they have it to compete against these other teams that we've talked about.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt, the Bulls have done a lot. Reaching those deals with DeRozan, Lonzo Ball, Caruso, it's going to be a great trio for them. I think they could be a big threat with this revamped roster, but I think once they get to those bigger teams, Miami Heat, the Nets, that's where they're really going to, have trouble to where I think they're going to make it far, but I wouldn't put them as top contenders just yet, like Amber said.
Yeah, I agree. I think their ceiling is, one playoff series win and getting bounced down the second round. I could be wrong, but maybe if they keep the team together for a few years to come, they could advance. But guys like Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Vucevic are all great players. But there's only so far you can go when you're in a conference with Durant, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden, and you got the Bucks with Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday, and Giannis. So it's going to be tough for the Bulls. I do see them, having an advantage over like the Knicks, for example, who had a great season last year. But I wouldn't even put the Bulls ahead of the Hawks right now, who made it to the Eastern Conference Finals, or the 76ers, who have a little more talent on their team. So that's just my opinion. But we'll see what happens. Moving on to the losers, which teams do you think, didn't hit the ball out of the park in this one? Start with Jaya.
I guess I would say, the teams that just didn't really acquire any good players. I guess I haven't really heard a lot about a lot of the other Eastern teams besides the Heat and the Bulls. I don't know. There wasn't really that many good contracts among a lot of different free agency teams.
I think one team. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say one team that comes to mind that actually was active in free agency were the Knicks, but I honestly don't think they spent their money wisely. A guy like Evan Fournier is a great role player, but he's not a star. Same with Kemba Walker. He's a great player, but he has had knee issues in the past. He can't seem to stay healthy. They kind of tied themselves up in a hole where there's only so far they can go. And if they want to be true championship contenders, they, should have spent their money on a superstar rather than these like good, decent players. To be honest with you, I don't think Julius Randle is a number one option. I think he's a number two at best. And that's even a little bit of a stretch. He's a great young player, still can improve. But you need, a point guard or a shooting guard who's really is a flat out scorer. And I don't think the Knicks have that right now.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ryan, there. I think they didn't get what they needed in free agency. But I also think that the Mavericks kind of lost out. Obviously, they have Luka Doncic, so it's okay. But they didn't really get him any backup or anybody to help him out. You can't rely on just one player to carry you to a championship. I think they should have made a little bit of more moves in free agency to get him the help that he needs.
Yeah, going off on that, I think that there's like a few signed players are out there still in free agency, with like Lauri Markkanen, and now there's Goran Dragic, who's part of the Kyle Lowry's trade, but is not joining the Raptors, it seems like. So it seems like both those two players are very linked to his joining the Mavericks. I think if they both join the Mavericks, having more of the European core like the Mavericks like to run, I think that'll be a really good addition for them. Obviously, they haven't done it yet, but so I agree with Amber that they are the loser right now, because they have not added stuff around their franchise player. But if they can have both those players and have Porzingis ready and give Tim Hardaway Jr. a bag earlier this offseason, which wasn't a little too much in my opinion for Tim Hardaway Jr., but I think that could be helping them out a lot.
Thank you for the insight, Aaron. I didn't even hear about Dragic and Markkanen potentially joining the Mavericks, but I think those would be two great pickups, especially if they can get them on a good contract. Now we're going to be talking about the player faced with the biggest pressure with his new team. Let's start with Amber. Which player do you think is faced with the biggest pressure?
I think this is pretty obvious, and I would be surprised if you guys didn't agree, but Kyle Lowry. I mean, he's a championship. Like, he's won them before, and I think with all the buzz surrounding the Heat, like we said, they were winners for the free agency. If he doesn't bring them to at least an NBA title final, I think that's going to be considered almost a loss for them. So I think there's a lot riding on him to carry this team.
That's a good pick. Yeah, I definitely think he's faced with a lot of pressure. What about you, Jaya?
Yeah, I definitely think the most pressure is going to be on Kyle Lowry as well, because of everything that Amber said. He was the biggest news story, but at the same time, I think that's his expectation, and I would be surprised if he didn't deliver. I feel like for people like you guys mentioned earlier, Kemba Walker to the Knicks, like that's kind of a more of a question mark. Like, what will he be able to do for the franchise? Or even the Bulls, that trio, like, will they be able to get like further up? Will they be able to beat out the Nets? Will they be able to face those big competitions in the East? So I feel like if I wasn't going to say, the obvious choice of Kyle Lowry, I would say those guys, because while Kyle Lowry is kind of expected to bring us to a certain point, those guys are kind of, it's more of a you need to prove it kind of thing.
Aaron, what about you?
I think it's Lonzo Ball. I think he got a pretty high value money, which a lot of people did not expect him to get. Obviously, he's got a great agent in Rich Paul, who's LeBron's agent. It helped him get that much. I still think Lonzo Ball is a very talented player, and I think he can live up to that contract, but that was a lot of money. So I think under pressure with the amount of money-wise, it's definitely Lonzo Ball.
I'm going to go with Russell Westbrook. I'm surprised you guys haven't brought this up. He hasn't been out of the first round except with the Rockets a few years ago, ever since Kevin Durant left. He's been on this is his fourth new team in 4 years, I believe. So he's been bouncing out of the league a lot. He's been known to be, a stat patter, which I don't believe is the case. I think he's just a great all-around player. But, at the end of the day, he has to get it done. He's with a superstar-led team now led by LeBron James and Anthony Davis, who already won a championship. If the Lakers don't make it to the finals, he's going to be the one that people are going to point at because, they have so much talent on the team. It's up to him as a point guard especially to really get their guys in the right place, manage the team effectively, and, not do too much. And I think that's been Westbrook's biggest flaw is he tries so hard and pushes so hard, but sometimes it backfires. So we'll see how he does. I know he's really excited to go back to his hometown in LA. I expect him to play really well, but like I said, he has to really tone it back a little bit, limit the turnovers, take good shots, and really galvanize the team. So that's my pick.
Yeah, definitely. I think the Lakers in general have a lot to prove, especially to all these naysayers. So it will be interesting to see what happens with them this season.
Lastly, we're going to talk about just general lessons learned from free agency. I know my biggest lesson is that if you want to make the bag, become a shooter. You look at a guy like Duncan Robinson, the unsigned free agent, who made $90 million as just a three-point assassin. And I honestly can't think of what else Duncan Robinson does well besides that. He is just one of the best shooters in the league. But it's crazy to think that if you just – I know it sounds easier than said than done, but if you lock yourself up in the gym and shoot millions and millions of three-pointers a day and you make a good amount, you can get signed pretty quick and for a lot. So that's my biggest lesson. What about you guys?
I think Schroder showed us all that if you get offered an $84 million extension, take it, or you are going to be left waiting around in free agency with people offering you very little. So I think it's just like knowing your worth, yes, but also realizing that you can only make so much and you should be able to accept that.
I agree. Jaya?
I would say never underestimate how much money you can get. These agents have really been working their tails off, and some of these players, not even the main names have been making into the 100 million. So I feel like that was a good lesson for these guys is like, you can definitely get paid. And a lot of them, were holding out to get better deals, and it ended up working very successfully for them. So I feel like it was just interesting to see where everybody ended up and, what was going to happen for them.
Lastly, Aaron?
Yeah, I think the lesson is you can make bag now. Like, anybody can make a bag. If you're an NBA, you can make up to – this is not like contracts a few years ago, you're making – 500,000, the worst players on the team. Nowadays, you're making $2 million or $3 million because if you're like you said, Ryan, even if you're just an average shooter, you're going to be making a lot of money. Like if you're a 2-guard, a 3-guard, and you can shoot, you're going to be making some money. Like you would not expect a player like Duncan Robinson, as you mentioned, in the league 7-8 years ago, and him making a lot of money now is incredible. And I know we mentioned Doug McDermott last show that you were incredible. crazed by that amount of value. There's players like that also making all this money, which is incredible. So become an NBA player if you're talented.
Become an NBA player if you're talented. I think that was the line of the day. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you guys so much for joining the Sports 2.0 show. I had a great time today. Please subscribe on the Sports 2.0 show on Facebook and on Twitch, and we'll see you guys later. Thank you so much.